Which is the, when I get to it, the Peacock quarterly update.
Cool.
And Karen is leading off on that.
Yes, and I have
with her sidekick.
Andrew Parsons, infrastructure extraordinaire. I will take the report as read, but I would like to cover just a couple of points in a brief introduction, and Andrew's just going to give a quick overview of the infrastructure progress as well. So the first point I just wanted to highlight was our approach to reporting for Peacock. This is our first Peacock report, and there will be regular updates on a quarterly basis. The intent of this report is to provide you with a wider story of all the activities that are happening in Peacock, and in particular how we're tracking towards delivering the benefits that were set out in the business case, and also how we're tracking to delivering the community outcomes. It is a non-financial story, and the financials are to be reported via the capital report as part of the Finance Committee. Now, appreciate this is the first time that we've put a report up, and we did have a little bit of toing and froing about what this might look like and where it might be reported. If we don't have it quite right in terms of having the financials separate, then please, we're totally open to suggestions about what format this should be in, and yeah, talk to us about that, and we're happy to make changes. It's also worth noting that in addition to these quarterly updates to committees, we also report regularly to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. So we report to them quarterly, and also various iwi groups. So we report to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development on a quarterly basis as part of our housing infrastructure drawdowns. So we provide them with an update there. And we're also required as part of our facility agreement to report annually. And that covers things like market conditions, progress of infrastructure, land subdivision, and house construction progress as well. The second point I wanted to just remind the committee about was that there is a commercial nature to some of the activities that are taking place in Peacock. There has been recent PX briefings covering those. So in some cases, certain questions or topics might be more appropriate for PX. So just keep that in mind. So overall, over the first 6 months, we've been really focusing on getting the team up and running, and getting things in place, and things are going quite well. And I will hand over to Andrew Parsons to talk about the infrastructure progress, which has really hit the ground running.
Thank you, Karen. Hey, so just a really brief summary that the infrastructure team, so this is about the water, wastewater, stormwater and the transport provisions. The team is going really, really well. Overall, in terms of the whole business case and what council signed up to do, we're ahead of program, which is really, really pleasing. The most significant component, I think, though, is the land acquisition. So we're still on track in terms of land acquisition in line with the process that council approved as part of the business case as well, which is acquisition in terms of the Public Works Act. Just to give you a sense, as at today, there's 38 individual property owners we're working with, and so 7 of those, one's not quite there yet, but 7 of those we have willing buyer, willing seller arrangements in place now. The balance, we're proceeding as we advise council in terms of the Public Works Act process, and that just puts a framework around the negotiations. What's the key for me in terms of property is not necessarily about getting property in this particular financial year or next. It's about delivering the property in 2 years' time to integrate with the construction program. So that's our objective around property, is integrating with the timing of the construction program. But look, overall, we're going really, really well. We've got a really high-performing team it's quite exciting. So I'll stop there and take questions.
Okay, we've got Angela first.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you for the report. Just on the land purchases, sorry, you said there's 38 of which 7 are willing buyer, willing seller.
Yeah.
Do they come to council, those land purchases, or do we give you delegated authority through the HIF fund process?
They're under the Chief Executive's delegation,
Okay.
financial delegations.
Okay, so you've got you've got a budget envelope that you have to manage.
That's correct,
all of
yes.
those purchases
Yep.
through.
Yep.
I know it's early stages, but are there likely to be any that are vehemently opposed and where we will have to apply the Public Works Act? Yes.
I think the simple answer is going to be yes,
Yeah.
potentially, but it's too early to say. There has been some media leading up to Christmas with one party in particular, but it's too early to say. But what's important is achieving, a land outcome in a couple of years' time for the infrastructure. So that's why, the Public Works Act sets out a process that allows us to achieve that, that's biased in favour of the property owner in terms of a process may not feel like that. But that's the point of that piece of legislation, to protect those people and wait in their favour.
Yeah. Sorry.
But our whole approach is not to simply rely on the mechanics of the legislation. So we've met everyone that we can personally. There's a couple we can't because they're overseas. All the interactions with them are face to face. So in terms of starting off a legislative process, we don't have to meet them, but we are striving to meet them and talk them through what we're doing. And we're still seeking willing buyer, willing seller settlements wherever that's possible.
In the executive summary on page 51.4, you said overall the program is running to schedule.
Yes.
Those that aren't running to schedule, are they significant?
No, everything's
It's
running.
just you said overall.
Yeah.
Overall usually
What-
means there's some that aren't.
What you'll see going forward is a potential deferral relating to property. So we're not signalling it through to the Finance Committee yet because we're early days in the process. But what's important is the end date when we get the property in relation to construction. But we do have property budget loaded in this year, and so that will come up as a deferral. So it's going to look like things are slow, but they're not. In terms of the program that's set out in the business case, everything's either on program or ahead of program.
So this report will just give us a little bit more of the detail. The progress and the monitoring of it will be in the capital program that Chris presents to the Finance Committee. Is that right? Where we can see if it's coming on track, if it's coming off track, etc. And then the finances are there as well in a separate report. For me personally, I'd like them together, but that's just as long as we're getting the information.
Well, I would like them together too, but that's the structure as it at the moment. So, but we're happy to take feedback if there's a better arrangement that elected members would like to see.
Yeah.
But that's how it's structured this time round. But we're open to change.
Yeah. Well, that would be my feedback for the report, was to have them together. On page 52, you're talking about the stakeholders. Does NAMTOC, do they have a name change? Are they not involved in this process at all?
No, I think we consult with NAMTOC, but we haven't formally done that. There are formal, for Southern Links, there is formal contracts in place with the Tangata Whenua Working Group there through NZTA, and that we're also working with THORC, and
Yeah.
we've actually secured an iwi liaison, who's Muna, to work across the complexities of the iwi engagement of the program, because there's so many projects that require differing levels of iwi engagement, so we're working on that.
Okay,
I think we sort of removed, if
there
the
was
word
something.
NAMTOC from the sort of preferred supplier list.
Yeah.
In respect to that last council.
I vaguely remember something. Okay.
Our focus is largely with THORC, Waikato Tainui, and through the TWWG.
Yeah, okay.
But NAMTOC have identified themselves as a party that has a view, and so to that extent, we will be engaging
Well,
with
they
them.
represent 5 iwi as well,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And just last point for future reports, possibly, on page 57, on point 49, you're talking about the mitigation plans are in place and being actively monitored. That's in regards, well, actually, that's in regards to all mitigation plans for everything, I'm assuming. Can we have a high-level look at those things as well, just to understand what the future, what those risks could be and what is in place to mitigate them should they arise?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other tricky thing is that there's an audit and risk committee, which I believe the risks are reported through
Yeah,
there as well.
very-
So it's a,
Makes it difficult, yeah.
yeah, so we'll work through that, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Gary, please.
Thank you. First thing on the property purchases, and this may or may not be confidential, I don't know, but when you do that sort of stuff, is there an escalation clause for someone who agrees early on in the process and then say subsequently the per metre rate goes up significantly? Do these people, the people who agreed early on, do they have some escalation protection?
So any
Just
sale and
generically.
purchase, it's a sale and purchase agreement.
Oh,
A
okay.
willing buyer, willing seller is just a bog standard sale and purchase agreement like you'd have for any property you might acquire yourself.
Sorry, I lost that bit. What's that again?
So it's a standard sale and purchase agreement. So it's just the price or the rates that are in the agreement at the point it's entered into between the parties.
Okay.
So there's no provision, the price is set at the point when the agreement's entered into.
Okay. Is that ever a sticking point when you're trying to do these sort of things that people say, if I agree now at this price, whereas there are people holding out and they might get a better per meterage price and that slows things down?
Not on this job. And in fact, in this job, it's a bit better because of the funding arrangements to open up.
Because of the what?
Because of the funding arrangements to
funding.
open up the whole growth cell, we can go out to everyone together. So what you haven't got is property acquisition spread over many, many years where you do have, price escalation or potentially
De-escalation, yeah.
de-escalation. But so by going out and treating everyone together at the same time, you really minimise the matter that you're talking about, but it has not been an issue to date.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I was a bit late getting back in. So on page 54, paragraph 26, there's a graph. Can you just tell me what's DBC?
Oh, sorry, that's the detailed business case, the Peacock
Okay,
detailed business
right.
case.
HIF, I know it is. Okay, can you just a real clear explanation? The green line is actual dwellings granted consent year to date, is that right?
Yep. Granted granted consent may not be built yet, but granted consent.
And I'm talking about stuff I don't know a heck of a lot about. Is there a building consent there as well?
So that's the building consent.
Oh, okay, that's a building
Yep.
consent, not a, okay.
Yep, I can
Okay,
update
and
that
then
to
the
make it
blue
clearer.
line is what?
So the blue line is the stage 1 yield projection.
That's our budget?
It's the yield projection, so it's the number of houses that were going to be built already. And the red line is the stage 2, which is the wider Peacock area.
Oh, okay, so the blue line and the red line are not, the blue line is totally not associated with the red line then?
Well, if you look at Peacock as a whole, you can add those two numbers together and say that's the yield that was for the whole of Peacock. But we like to break it down into stage 1, which is a small area around the Dixon Road area that's already underway. There's about 400 dwellings there already.
Okay.
And the stage 2 area is the area that's enabled by the HIF infrastructure, and it's basically the rest of Peacock.
Okay, so the green line looks to be 0 at the moment. Is that 0?
Sorry, it's not. There's about 23.
Okay, so there's 23, and the blue line looks like it should be 64.
Yep.
So are we behind? I mean, I know it's very early and these are,
Yep.
so we are a little bit behind.
So, I do have a good explanation for this. So that line there, it looks like if we make a projection for the rest of the year that we're likely to have around 40 dwellings granted consent, and they're mostly in the stage 1 area. And so the reason for that is when these projections were made, so these projections here are what were made as part of the detailed business case and the indicative.
Which is what gave us the funding for HIF.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
And
So that's sort of contractually locked in, isn't it? We have to
no,
meet
our
to meet.
HIF funding is contractually locked in for the infrastructure. but
Predicated
it's
on
not
us
related
meeting
to
certain
yields.
targets and things?
The targets that are in the facility agreement are for completion dates for the infrastructure, which is totally on track.
Okay.
So so these projections were made in 2016-17 when we were forming the business case, and at the time we were working with the Adair company, or a major developer, and we're working through an MOU with them, Memorandum of Understanding, and those discussions were based. Basically, our indications from those discussions were that there was going to be around 300 to 350 houses away quickly in those first 2 years. But since then, the developer shifted the consent, I guess made it a 800 or so consent, and then that stage development kind of became a little bit bigger, which increased the complexity of the consent, and because of that, the developer shifted the hearing out till April this year. And you have heard about, they've come in, they've presented about their development, which is going to be really awesome for Peacock. It did receive over 80 submissions, so there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done to prepare for that. So what that means is that those yields, which were largely, for the first 2 years, they were largely based on the info that we had from that developer. And because of that delay, it's just shifted them out a couple of years. So depending on how the consent approval goes, which is, I think, April, mid this year, we should know, it's still likely that there will be approximately 300 to 400 houses in before the bridge. And we know that in the context of the wider benefits, where we've said we'll have 3,700 houses over 10 years, we're on track with that, and we know that because we're enabling the land capacity through.
Okay. The HIF funding is predicated on us installing infrastructure,
Yes,
not houses.
yep. But the benefits.
Is that right? I mean, sorry, am I accurate in what I said then?
Yes,
So we can still get the HIF, we haven't breached the HIF.
No.
If we've put in all the stormwater, all the roads, all the water pipes, but there's no houses out there.
yep.
Okay.
But the benefits of that investment, the investment objectives, and why we're doing it is to enable more houses, to
Of course
meet
it
our
is,
MPS
of course it is, but
UDC
our
targets.
contract, our HIF contract is predicated on infrastructure being built, not on
right.
houses being built.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Rob, please.
Just to follow on from that question, I guess the risk then becomes, excuse me, that we have a loan to repay and we have no DC money having come in if there's been no sections sold.
Yes, that is one
And
of
that's a financial risk, isn't it?
That's a key risk, and the mitigations that we've got in place at the moment, that's unlikely to happen. We've got really high levels of consenting activity that are likely to take place. Already, I mean, the yield across the first 10 years is 3,700. We've got the major Amberfield consent, and we've also got another 800 to 1,000 houses that we think is going to happen very close in the next 12 months. And that's only from a few developers. So, yeah, I think.
So it could be
it's
just a
okay.
timing issue
Yeah.
in terms of getting the first 100 houses, the first
It
100
is.
kick-started.
And
Yeah.
there will still be that progress before the bridge is in as well, but once that infrastructure gets closer, that's when you're going to see it increase quite a lot.
Okay.
And I think I said in the report, we will come back with an updated projection of how we think that's happening in relation to the program.
So just coming back to the questions that I've got, why are we having two reports on this? One to this committee and one to the Finance Committee, and you'll obviously see that I sense that there's significant risk in having two silos separately report.
Yes.
Well, won't probably be
Understandable.
two different groups, but having two separate reports on two different days all about the same project.
So we did discuss internally, we wanted to have the financials all in one, but then we thought there might be duplication because it would go to the finance committee as well. So in the end, we just made the decision to make it separate. If that's something that needs to change, then we're totally open to changing it.
Okay, I'll leave that for debate, I think, because I have some concerns there. Quarterly reports, sounds good, but given the high risk and the significance of this whole project, do you think that at this stage, and in order to keep you, management and council nimble enough, should there be reports on a more regular basis so that we continue to get updates, around land purchase, around the ability or the challenges that, say, Amberfield might be having in getting their consent over the line, and all of those sorts of things that might delay us in terms of, getting a little bit of confidence around the project, knowing that there's going to be some revenue streams, and being then in a position to make good our sort of predictions that we will come out of this deal at the end of a 10-year period reasonably comfortably where we expect to be.
Yep. So again, if that's what the councillors want, then we're open to making that happen. We have been working to keep you informed as issues arise on particular projects.
Yep.
So plan changes, significant consents, land acquisition, PDAs, things like that. So we will always engage with you in a timely fashion around that. But in terms of an overall project status update, whatever council wants.
Do you think there might be some advantage to us as a governance group, perhaps at this particular time in the life of the project, that we did get maybe 2 monthly updates rather than quarterly, just to kind of give us a degree of confidence? This is my suggestion, and quite clearly other councillors might have a different view, but just in terms of getting some confidence that we're on the bike.
Yep.
And we're actually starting to pedal forward.
Bi-monthly would sound okay. I think monthly might be quite frequent.
Well, we don't meet monthly in some of these groups anyway.
Bi-monthly is
Don't quite meet bi-monthly either, so I think you might want to get
I'm probably looking at something a little more frequent than quarterly, at least at this particular point, but that's
Okay.
something that, okay.
We'll see what we can do.
every second meeting cycle, if we said that might
Yep.
be more accurate.
And my last question is really again around this uncomfortable feeling that anyone would have at this particular point in the start of such a massive project, and that's under our risks of in paragraph 48. I wonder if you could develop a bit of a matrix that would look at each of those risks, like similar to what we do in the Audit and Risk Committee, and have some ratings attached to them and some colours and
like that.
that's it. Yeah. Is that in here? Is it?
No.
And I missed it. Okay.
It's in my hand.
Okay, so something like that, which would give us a kind of a real time, as much as it is real
Yeah,
time,
great.
sort of update as to what risks have changed and what impact that's going to have on the whole of the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's pretty easy to do, that one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We're doing that already, and there's a comprehensive
I
list.
imagine
So
you
it's
would be, yeah.
no trouble to bring some of that stuff through.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, sorry, councillor Gallagher.
I think I raised it before, just in the GM report, just around all new development like Peacock. So if there's parks, walkways, where we can, we get the sign up, even if it's just a mowed grass strip. And if there's a safety issue, because that came up before, and we need to fence the bank or whatever, but we still have the sign, proposed walkway, proposed park. And why I raise that question is that we've had cases where the lake walkway, Awatiri Avenue, and I fear parts of the River Road area near K Road, where there's a clear intent to put some sort of walkway in the area, that people will unwittingly think it's a sort of private reserve, when in fact it's intended for public access. what are we doing in that area? You know, because to me, the ideal world is as the construction of houses start, it's crystal clear that the public realm is there.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the strategies that we're going to implement as part of our communications and engagement strategy. So it's one of the actions. The bridge will be here.
Yeah.
So key sites as well. There's quite a lot of significant archaeological and cultural sites in the area too.
But I'm kind of thinking, and while we clearly can say that, it's important that, you know, the appropriate signage and provision is made. And while, for example, you may not have the paved, you know, hypothetically paved walkway, but surely within the budget there's a bulldozer, there's a bit of gravel, there's a sign or a grass strip. Do you see what I'm getting at? You can say all that, but it seems to me we need to have either the signage or crystal clear from word go.
Yep.
Yep, we can take that on board. I think the other opportunity is partnership through developers. So a significant part of the Esplanade frontage, for example, is one developer, and some of those are the consent discussions that are playing out at the moment.
What I would like in terms of our monitoring is there's some clear section which says what tangible has been done in that area. And don't get me wrong, I don't expect us to spend millions and millions of dollars, which we may not have, you know, whatever, and certainly where there's a partnership relationship. But the critical factor for me, and we've got other cases, is that if I'm walking in an area, I'm crystal aware that that's either going to be a pathway or a reserve, or it is already a reserve with a strip and a sign.
Yep. And some of that will play out through the structure plan process our planning team, you know, are going to be embarking on in terms of taking that holistic view and having a fresh look with the elected members around.
So through the chair, I don't know how you do this. What I'm requesting is obviously some flag in a report, you know, some topic that just clearly underlines that.
Thanks. Ryan, please.
Thanks, Chair. Karen and Mr. Parsons, just a question for you. The capital report and finances that you mentioned in B, is that going to address that funding gap issue that we had a briefing on recently?
So it's my understanding that that will be a separate report that will be taken up by Greg Carstens on the 26th of February.
Okay. Because I guess I just echo Councillor Angela's point, just in terms of a little bit of duplication and appreciating that you guys are trying to be succinct in terms of the report. But even if we're not able to vote on the finances in, say, this committee, just having visibility of those figures, just so it's sort of, I guess, congruent throughout the process, and appreciating that you're on this new journey. And I'm happy to speak to the report structure as well, but I'm certainly happy with quarterly. I think that's more than enough without getting into micromanagement of 2 monthly reports when you've got so many moving parts. But I'll say that
we'll
for debate.
save that for the debate.
Yep.
Yeah. Paula, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of short questions around the environmental activities. You shouldn't be surprised that I'm going to raise that. And I see there is some comment around working out a biodiversity management framework. So are we making progress with the stakeholders that had strong concerns, including Professor Clarkson, of course, who raised significant concerns around the green space within Amberfield and adjacent to Riverlea? Are we making, or where will we make that progress?
The resource consent process, the regulatory process, will partly deal with that, the Amberfield consent. And I know there has been so the work that's happening with the biodiversity framework, so that's a pilot it's almost separate project to that. It's a first, I think, in New Zealand, which has been applied to such a large area. The team are working on that. It's interesting because the resources or the expertise that are inputting into that, they're quite slim on the ground. So the team are working hard to get that underway, completed and rolled out and implemented. And I think it's likely to happen in the next 6 months.
Okay, I'm a little surprised by the comment about it being quite slim. I think there is a wealth of experience around biodiversity, but I get what you mean.
Yeah, what I meant was there's not the ecologists aren't abundant compared to the amount of work that's required to get it done. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just keep watching that, because there are stakeholders in our community who want to be engaged at the appropriate time, so we need to have some confidence that in a consent process they will have their chance to propose their thinking and have it considered by the Commissioner. And am I safe to say to them, look, you'll get your say at that time? Am I?
Can I come back to you on that? I will find out and I will let you know.
I think it is important, because the status of the consent process itself will have a bearing on to what extent they can speak and what they can speak on. And look, we know people aren't opposing the development of Peacock. They're talking about some of the conditions of the development of Peacock and how they can get some win-wins. So I think it's really important.
Yeah. So if there was if they made a submission, then they will go through that hearing process and.
We don't want to get down the line and find out that there's
It's presuming it's a notified consent.
That's right. The type of notification of consent, if it's discretionary or it might be limited, they may have a limited things that they can submit on. And we know what they want to submit on. They want to submit on the quality of the biodiversity, offsets, etc. So, we shouldn't play naive about that. We should give them their chance to explore and extend their arguments and have them considered. The other question is, I notice on number 20, with the Wairiri overbridge, physical works contract has been awarded and contractors are in place. When is it signalled that the bridge would be complete?
Just to be clear, the bridge over State Highway 1 or the bridge across the river?
Oh, that's just the bit over State Highway 1?
That's just the bit over State Highway 1. I'm just looking at Mr. Allen because I don't know the date. I think it's a 3-year construction period, 2021. I can check offline and come back to you.
Okay.
But I think that's about the completion date.
Couldn't add any accuracy.
It's
All right,
I'm one
that's
step
fine.
removed from it.
I'll watch that. I kind of misread it as the major bridge, but I see that now it's not.
2020,
because-
2021.
Yeah, because I am interested. We will get, we got some information about the technical difficulties of the bridge and the potentials for designs and things, and I'm just signalling now I'd like some more feedback into
I
that.
do think that with all of those ones in that table, that a expected completion date would be handy to have as another column.
Yep, we can
I think a timeline approach to these things is very helpful, because the members of the public ask you, when's the bridge going to be built? What is it going to look like? And if you have no information, you can't share any. So I'd appreciate that. And
that'll be, we can definitely do it. There's a timeline in the business case, we'll reflect that through. At the moment, we're absolutely on track, and the business case had the bridge open in June 2023. So, there's no change to that. We're exploring opportunities.
The main bridge or
the main bridge across the Waikato River. We're exploring opportunities to accelerate that if possible, but it's just really early days at this stage. But we're on track with the program that Council signed off on, and that had that bridge opening in June 2023.
okay, and I had some questions along the lines of the numbers of houses and time, but some of those have already been answered. But can I just ask about number 13? Over the next 10 years, it's projected to deliver a third of Hamilton's medium-term housing needs and 26% of the long-term. What gives you the confidence that that will happen? Because there are other areas developing, infill, there's SHAs,
Yep.
there's other parts of town.
So that's information that was formed as part of the detailed business case. So it's one of the lines, I guess, that we pull out of that. And the confidence that we have around that is that it takes into account all of the growth scenarios for the wider city.
Right.
So where we look at the amount of infill that's happening, the other growth areas that might come on board as well. So that's all of that thinking was taken into account when looking
That
at
answers
that
my
number.
question. So you looked at the whole context of where growth is likely to happen, what consents are in for other parts of the city, etc.
Yep, that's right.
All right, then that's fine. Thank you. Oh, No, that's fine. I'll leave that one. Thank you.
Thanks. Mark, please.
Hello. Where were we up to with, we were at Access Hamilton the other day, and there was talk about the Southern Links not going ahead as early as we thought it might with the state highway changes. What's the exact state of play at this point in time?
So again, I might defer to Mr. Allen, some of the detail, but the NZTA bit of Southern Links, that's right across the southern end of Hamilton. So imagine airport interchange on the east, north of the airport, across the top of State Highway 3 at the top of the hill, and hooking into Greenwood Street, Kaikatea Drive intersection. So that portion's roughly the NZTA bit. And my understanding that's not in their current program for the immediate future, but I'm just going to hand over to Chris.
Yes, through you, Mr Chair. So it's not in NZTA's current program for delivery in the next 10 years. Right. What they've confirmed is just a continuation of a property acquisition program. They are buying properties, probably responsive to landowner requests, but they haven't programmed design or construction. So for us, that's just a continual advocacy through the Regional Transport Committee and the various programs to try and move it in, which is what we've been doing for a number of years.
Excuse me, Chris, I thought the design was programmed in
No.
the next 3 years.
No.
Under the previous regional council thing, I'm certain it was. There may have been changed by the latest government GPS.
Yeah. Look, I'll double check, but the final decisions that came out is really just an acquisition program. They are working positively with us on all of the necessary pre-designation issues. So we're working together on, the environmental mitigations and understanding the BATs and all the other issues. So they're working and spending money on doing that in conjunction with us, but the actual design, no, it's not funded in the next foreseeable future.
No, well, that's not the point I raised. I was talking about the previous, there was an allocation for design. I'm not saying that it's still there under the latest, I'm just struggling.
So what you might be thinking was a position in the regional land transport plan, which was a regional view, but it hasn't
No, that
translated.
regional view was for the whole thing to be done as the second priority in the end.
Yep, I'll send an email around with the latest status, but I'm pretty sure that all they've got funded is the property
No, sorry,
purchase.
you're not hearing what I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
talking about the previous government's approval. Yeah. There was a period in time when the design was on the books of the government of the NZTA, but not the construction. That was what was lacking. It may be that they've resiled from the design, but in any event, I think it's identified. The construction was never there under either government.
That's right.
And I think that's we've identified a particular problem, and it's a problem we're having with the rest of the region, who think the most important thing is the 4-lane highway to Tauranga and Wellington, or at least to Taupō, and we've always thought that Southern Links needed to be done, and the particular problem is the congestion through the southern suburbs now. It's almost impossible every morning.
I think, so the thrust of my question was, are the goalposts getting further away or closer in your mind, or is it significant?
My answer to that would probably at this point in time further away.
Right.
In terms of delivering the Southern Links section.
Right, because is that likely to affect the uptake? It won't change anything we're doing, obviously, but...
I don't think it's relevant to the uptake. The pieces of infrastructure that affect the uptake are the pieces of infrastructure that's funded through the HIF agreement.
Right.
That's why they're in there. So the state highway bit is more about regional benefits and regional connectivity. It's not about housing yield in Peacocks per se.
Right.
I think I'd just say that, in my opinion, that's a rather narrow way of looking at it, because the issue is the whole southern area, not just Peacocks,
exactly right.
and that unlocks sections of land that are now in Waipa that they can't move with, no one can move with, until they have some confirmed construction, and then our talks with Waipa Council are sort of hypothetical until we know when that's going to happen. So, it's not just peacocks at the southern end of the city, it's the whole float.
If I may, through you, Mr Chair, you're quite right. This council, for a number of years, has given advocacy for Southern Links, and we've been very successful, I think, around the regional table and its position in the regional land transport plan and the regional view. So it's elevated to a really high priority. It's up there with Cambridge to Paieri as the region's priority. It needs to translate then now into a funding plan by NZTA, and that's the advocacy we need to give. So we've got a really high in the regional thinking with Waipa and Waikato and our regional partners, but it hasn't got a funding plan to deliver it yet.
So maybe we need to have a look at that strategically in a separate report almost at some stage, because by necessity they're only focusing on peacock, but it's a bigger issue.
So much around it, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. Second question, are the schools, with regards to the discussions with the Education Ministry, etc., current thinking on that is what?
So the Ministry of Education is currently investigating schooling locations in the area. Yeah, so they're working through their process, and
So
we're working closely with them,
Yeah, okay.
which is really cool.
So they haven't given you an indication.
Karen, what
as
does
to-
that mean in practice? Because
Yeah.
I've heard that from the Ministry of Education before. Does it mean that we'll get a school this side of 20 years out, or that when people are actually needing it, or will they be sort of retired and needing an old folks home before a school's built, like we had in Rotatuna for many years?
So the benefit of being at the table right now with Ministry of Education is that we're lining that up essentially, and because and also the benefit of having all of the infrastructure funded and ready to go, it opens opportunities up, I guess. I do have to be careful with what I say with information because obviously there's sensitivities around land acquisition, etc. But more information will come to you on that.
We don't want to know necessarily exactly where the school is. I think
Sort of know
people
where
are
we're at.
seeking assurances that there will be a school and other vital community facilities like that when sufficient people there need them.
There will be.
Okay.
There will be a school.
That is all I will say.
Okay.
And I'll tell you when, once it's known.
Thank you. Okay, no, that's good to know. And the sports park, I guess there's not a lot you can say about that at this stage, but basically we want it, they don't. Is that right?
The sports park.
Yeah.
So that's a commercial matter that's being worked through as part of the consenting process. But the team are working to secure certainty around sports park, active recreation reserve areas in the Peacock area. So we're actively working with the landowner, which is largely.
So when you say certainty,
Mark, I just think you need to be careful. We're not just talking about Amberfield here.
Yeah.
no, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm done. Thank you. Cheers.
Sorry, Mungo Norm.
Yep. Kia ora korua. Ngā mihi mō ngā mahi anga whakamua. Greetings, acknowledgements, you too. Thanks for advancing this project. I'm heartened by paragraph 12 because not only is it bilingual, it captures the essence of that particular area. And a couple of points. I'd be really proud if the council had a bilingual strategy embedded in these documents and across the whole council in terms of acknowledging our treaty partnership with iwi and ngā iwi Māori. But my question is in regards to Peacock holistically, is there a Indigenous placemaking framework embedded within the thinkers or the decision makers across the whole area?
I think that the person that can answer that question is not here, but I can get the answer for you. There's the structure plan process, obviously, which identifies the archaeological and cultural sites. But in terms of a plan to manage that, I'm not sure.
So across New Zealand, there's a lot of high-level Indigenous placemaking principles that are used around, master plans and development, and I think it'd be good if our council had one of those.
Can I
And
come back to you with the answer?
Yep, and I referenced it in part in my question around the CBD development, around how do we recognise cultural narratives and whakapapa history, the DNA of the whenua in regards to iwi Māori. So it'd be good to see how that's embedded holistically across peacocks. And the other question is in reference to the cultural considerations, acknowledging, I think Namtok was mentioned, and Thork and others, Waikato Tainui. But I just want to make a question around 46, the RFR in terms of land. You know what percentage of the land that could come under that particular regime in terms of first right of refusal for Waikato Tainui?
So in terms of refusal first rights, so just so everyone understands, as part of the 95 treaty settlement, land that was derived by the Crown has a right that Waikato or iwi has over that land if it's ever disposed of or changed ownership. So for us in this project, that's a relatively small area. So it's the area of land around Cobham Drive to the north side of the river. We have previously, we've had a really positive engagement with Waikato Tainui over first rights and how we recognise first rights, and that really positive engagement has resulted in for want of a better word, a contractual agreement, which has been previously reported to Council and has been signed and executed by both parties. So from a Hamilton City perspective, we have an agreed way forward in terms of recognition of and dealing with refusal of first right matters. So actually that's something that I've personally been really proud of, because it's a significant issue associated with peacock, and so to have a clear understanding and agreement on a way forward is really quite something for council.
Yeah, thanks. Look, we'll go to the recommendation on page 51, but just on that, Rob, your request for quarterly reporting, which is enshrined in the resolution, and when I float the idea of every second meeting, that's apart from specified dates like 31st of March and the 30th of June and things like that, that's almost quarterly. That's every 12 weeks, because we've got a 6-weekly, more or less, meeting cycle. So it might be a moot point if we could all agree that there was every second meeting. It wouldn't be so frequent. The staff would have to do heaps of work. It wouldn't be on the exact quarter, but it'd be in time to get the report done for every second meeting.
Yeah, I'm not planning to.
And it wouldn't.
Put an amendment to this
No, yeah, okay.
legislation. What I'm looking for at this stage, given that this is the first report,
Yeah.
is maybe for staff to have a think about how regularly they think it would be best to report to us, and it may be more frequent at this point in time, and less frequent as I mentioned, as we get a bit of pedal power on the bike. We probably don't need to be informed and as up to date with some of the particular challenges that might be being faced.
I was also thinking of Councillor Ryan's point where he didn't want it done more than quarterly, and it seemed like every second meeting might be sort of work for everyone at this point. So I was just trying to see if there was a way through that without having, and staff, Karen?
If I could just provide some assurance as well, we do have a program board set up which has 3 general managers, Chris Allen, Jen Beard and David Bryant, along with Taipu Paki from Waikato Tainui and Daryl Coulter from NZTA. So that is a monthly meeting, and it's focused on everything to do with the program, in particular the deliverables, the risks, the financials, etc. So if that provides you with
Well, it's
comfort.
more like saying something quarterly doesn't meet the meeting cycle.
Yeah,
Just like
right.
6 monthly from Hamilton Central Business Association doesn't meet our meeting
Yeah.
cycle. Sometimes we're miles out because of the timing issue. Whereas if you actually found from governance when reports had to be in, and you said, okay, every second meeting, knowing they're 12 weeks apart, would kill all birds with one stone, sort of potentially. That's what I'm thinking. But I agree with Rob's point about leaving it to management to finalise that, but they've heard the issue, perhaps.
I think, Rob, Dave and Rob, I've just spoken to Chris, and I hope I don't misrepresent what he just said. This comes up in the Finance Committee meetings anyway, under the capital project reporting. So that covers everything that council's doing, and a subset of this will be the Peacock's development. So that would be, anything coming, falling out of kilter will be identified then. And that's in our standard reporting process, and it's every 6 weeks, or
Perhaps
there or
that-
thereabouts.
My only concern with that, Chair, is that we've got 2 separate reports.
Yeah, and
And
that
that's
issue,
where the disjointment, if that's a word, could occur, that on one hand, these guys think they're looking after it, and then Chris says, yes, I don't have to worry about it.
I think that
And we end up heading down 2 separate pathways.
management has to come up with something better than what we've got now, I feel, because it is disjointed.
It's the same people, isn't it?
Well,
It's the same people
yeah,
having
but
the
there'll be
discussion.
different reporting periods, Gary. You see, that's part of the problem. So could potentially have different sets of figures on the same subjects even.
Every report will be as at a certain date.
Yeah, and that date should match our meeting cycle, so they're as up to date as possible, I would suggest.
I'm sorry, I just think and no disrespect to anyone, I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I don't think it's as bad as you think it is, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
That's true.
Yeah. I was about 16 years ago, yeah. I remember to the day.
Look, let's ask staff to have management to have a discussion about this. This will be reported to the council. It's those B and C can be council at the next council meeting when the minutes of this are reported. We can call up what's management's view on how to handle these issues we've raised about the frequency and the potential splitting of the reports, and we can have another bite at that at council. We can't decide that around the table here for them, I don't think, and management can't either. So that's my suggestion, that we go ahead with this, knowing that it will, whenever the next council meeting is, it'll come up then anyway. We have the opportunity to raise it then. So I'll move this as it is, knowing that we're going to have another bite at it. It's seconded by Ryan. Oh, yeah, got him first. Okay, Rob, you want to speak to it?
Look, I just want to speak very briefly to it. If anything has consumed council over the last 4 years and will over the next 15 years will be Peacock. It's by far our biggest project that we will have online, and it is financially, it is beset with huge financial risk. Our debt will increase by 50% just to accommodate the HIF loan on what it currently is now. And then we've got reputational risk. And I think it's absolutely important that we, as governors, have a coordinated approach to know what's going on. And I just fear that 2 separate reports on different dates, despite, and I agree with Gary that they will have dates attached to them, but those dates will be different, and we could well have disconnect between those dates and what really is going on. I don't like reporting simply for the sake of reporting, but I think that staff may well want to report more frequently at certain times through the journey, because circumstances may change. And I sense that there are some red flags in this report. First one is on paragraph 29, where it talks about the number of dwellings, consents granted, being down on the original projections in the business case. And that has an impact on our potential financial risk if that red flag stays up for too long. We talked also about some of the discussions going on with developers there, without getting into detail, and how that might delay the start of the project too. So I think as governors, we really need to have good oversight as this project gets gets moving and gets up to speed, where we will ultimately have some confidence then to sit back and let it roll itself out. So for that reason, I'm suggesting maybe staff should, over the next month or so, have a good look at what the options might be for how they report back and to whom they report. And it may well be that the financial and this report could be combined, and it could be either reported to the Finance Committee or to the Growth and Infrastructure Committee as it seems appropriate. But I'd far sooner have one report that combines everything instead of having two that we're not sure what goes into which, and there was already some confusion on that in the questions today. But thanks for the work that's being done. It's really great, and thanks for the attempts to meet the challenges around this, because I know that over the next few years this will be one of our major council challenges. Thank you.
Thanks. Mark, please.
Following on from Councillor Pascoe there, no one's under any illusion of how huge this is. I don't think we can get reported enough on this, frankly. Because it is so big, we'll be making so many decisions over the next, or councils will over the next 15 years, stage by stage by stage. I'd please keep your eye on the connecting stuff. I was pretty well freaked out when I heard that road may be a bit later than we expected, because the Southern Links Road affects more than just Peacocks. It affects the Kahikatea Drive entrance, it affects everything. And plus it also affects the way that people will flow to and from the city. Will they do most of their business out Cambridge and go to St Peters rather than Melville, etc.? So it raises all those questions, and all those, I guess we just need to be up to speed with that, because it does affect how it will go. It does affect our appetite for risk. It does affect our confidence, and it does affect the decisions we make stage by stage. So please don't think that's insignificant to us, the government's latest thinking, because that changes more often than the wind. Thank you.
Thanks. Gary, please.
Thanks. I totally acknowledge what Rob's saying, although I do disagree to some extent. I think the reporting to the Finance Committee will show the entire Council's position, and within that, peacocks will be one, a very significant part of that report. Then to get a second report about peacocks in another week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, I think is beneficial, not unbeneficial, if that's such a word. I am very, very aware that reporting does not mean things won't go wrong. Reporting is about telling us if things have gone wrong or if things are going right. Reporting does not stop things going wrong. So I'm not suggesting that doubling the amount of reports is going to halve the amount of risk. That's wrong. And I am thrilled to see the bats are going to be okay.
Slugs and bugs. Mayor Andrew, thanks.
Yeah, so I just want to remind members that we unanimously voted this in to go forward. I just don't see this as risk. I see this as just a fantastic, exciting opportunity.
Leo and I voted against it, but it's not a big deal. But it just wasn't unanimous, just a
I'll uphold that point of order, and Andrew has corrected it.
Yeah, sure. I thought when it came to the final vote that we did all vote for it.
I know what he's meaning. The final vote was for the overall LTP. There was an individual vote earlier, so that's the...
Yeah, I'm talking about the final vote that was voted unanimously. I didn't realise...
No, look,
I didn't realise that on Peacock. And when we accepted the HIF, which set Peacock off, I didn't realise it wasn't unanimous.
Well, look, it's not a strong point anyway of this speech, not a big issue, so let's move on. We can check the minutes later.
So I just don't see this as risk. I see it as opportunity. And I guess that's comes down to the way that you look at the world. So I don't believe doomsday's here. I believe we've got very, very good staff in this council who are taking this forward in a really responsible, really good way. We've got good reporting coming back, and I really do think that this is moving the city forward. 30 years worth of promises and direction on Peacock, and this council's got it off the ground and running. So I just congratulate you all. I think it's going to be a very exciting day when we cut the ribbon on that bridge.
Look, I'm going to just speak at the end there. I largely agree with the procedural points that Councillor Rob brought up, actually. I think it is a little bit messy and disjointed about the way it's reported. Andrew is right. It's a great opportunity, and I'm glad we voted for it. But it's also, this council, in a governance sense, is required to keep on top of the issue, and we need to have that done in as efficient and sensible way as possible. It will also help the public follow it. And I would just ask management to look at a less split way of handling that, which may hopefully make it easier for these two staff next to us here who are in charge of the more detailed part of the work. The other thing I'd like to say is Peacock is about development of the city towards the south. It's not just about Peacock and the narrow area, and Mark did make this point to a certain extent. We need to be looking at how we relate to the airport, how we relate to Waipa district, how we relate to the new roading and rail connections that are proposed, and cycle connections proposed for down that way. And sometimes when we just focus on one area, we don't have the big picture in mind, and by necessity staff are given jobs to do which are only components of that big picture, but we as governance have to look at the whole picture. And I think at least in one thing today we identified an area that's or a particular part of it that's potentially a problem. The state highway connections down the south certainly won't be capable of looking after what the housing that goes into Peacock, or the inter-regional connections, or the airport's connections with the city, in my opinion. So that's just one thing. There's plenty of other stuff we're about to have. In fact, I noticed an appointment come through for a meeting with Waipa District to discuss future boundary issues coming up soon. Well, the timing of when those issues can be settled is totally up in the air, because we don't know this roading aspect. So there are a whole lot of things that we have to be over top of in a strategic way. So I would like that sort of to be kept in mind whenever we're getting the bigger picture reports in this area. Anyway, that's my tuppence worth. We'll go to the vote. Hands, I believe. We've got the recommendation in front of you as written. Page 51. Those in favour raise their hands. Against raise their hand. It's carried unanimously, thanks. We'll go on to item 10, the Waikato Regional Cycle Trails Network. 63, thanks, Karen and Andrew. Eh? Yeah. Robin's doing this. Just note in the resolution there, in part B, there's a point that's been inserted after discussion with me as a representative on the Regional Transport Committee. Look, this subject to the program business case reflecting stronger links to Hamilton's urban cycle trail network, because the proposal that came to the region forgot there was a city smack in the middle of the region, not to put too fine a point in it, and we think that's eminently fixable, but we've just put that hook in there to make sure that it gets addressed. But Robin, do you want to say the rest of the stuff?
Thank you. So just as a background to this report, there are a number of projects that are being looked at a regional level. Speed management's one of them, and cycling has been another. And investigating the benefits of us looking across the greater region as a whole, and how we can work together and leverage the benefits from that. So there was a regional cycling report developed in 2016 and 17, and there were a large number of stakeholders involved with that, which included Hamilton City. Out of that, there was a number of investment objectives identified as to ways that we could really leverage the benefits from cycling, and a cycle trails report business case was then developed as a subset of that work. So those trails are illustrated on page 66 under item 22, and include a variety of trails across the Waikato region, and include the Te Awa River Ride, which obviously runs through Hamilton City. When the business case was being worked through, there were a number of key activities that they wanted to achieve through the development of cycle trails, and they are outlined in paragraph 27, with enhancement and extending cycle trails, growing service providers, and looking at capability and capacity. There were 3 options considered for the business case: business as usual, so that's the same level of investment and activity from each of the partners; an incremental change, which was really something between business as usual and a transformational one, being the 3rd option. The transformational scenario was the preferred scenario, as that was seen as really maximising the benefits to the region and to achieve those various objectives that had been put through. This is part of a process. So the business case has been developed. They're now looking for each of the partners who were involved with that to endorse that, so that they can then start looking at moving through to the next steps. So we're just at step 1. Once that process has been worked through and all of the partners report back to Regional Council, then they'll move into the next steps. And we're expecting that as we go through that process, that staff will come back and report regularly on those steps, and also report on any obligations that that may have on council moving forward. Happy to take questions on that.
Thanks. We've got Angela first.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I'm getting in early today, aren't I?
You
It's
are.
good.
You're beating Gary.
Thanks, Robin. This is driven by WRC and their structure of committees, is that right?
So it's reported through to the Regional Transport Committee.
Yeah, okay. How does it fit with our strategic principles in our bike plan? Is there a good alignment?
There are good alignment, and some of those are included and outlined on page 37. I mean, we're looking for increasing transport choice. We're looking for improved safety, so having good facilities for cyclists, improved safety. So there are good correlations with where we want to go as well.
The report talks about the need to have unanimous support from the partner councils. Is there likely to be anyone not wanting to support this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So over the next few weeks, I guess this report, the same report, will go to those councils for hopefully sign off?
Yes, it's not only councils, but it's a variety such as Department of Conservation and those sorts of partners, yes.
Yep. We've got about $50 million in our budgets for in the later years of our 10-year plan, if I can remember that, for the biking plan, biking network and things like that. What's the likelihood that some of that, I suppose it may be too early for you to answer, but what's the likelihood of some of that needing to come forward? Because I think that most of that money is in 2025, 26?
7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9, yeah.
So yes, it is too early to know.
Yeah.
I think what it does show is that we have taken cycling seriously, and we actually have funding in these early years around cycle connections as well, and that I guess leads to Councillor Dave's point about the fact that the city has made large investments in cycling infrastructure and has signalled an intent to continue to, and that will be a key feeder into and out of the cycle trails network.
I think we've got $4 million this financial year, haven't we, for Te Awa, for our southern link?
Next financial year. We've got
Is it
some money this year
next
to
financial
do the detailed design and then complete the link next year.
Okay, all right. So if this gets signed off today, the process is that we will then be a partner in this group, and we will all look at our budgets and our strategic alignment for biking, cycling, whatever you want to call it, and then will the outcome of that be sort of a region-wide plan that comes back? I mean, this is a business case today.
Yes.
Is that sort of the outcome that?
Yes, it's looking at how you manage that, whether you set up an entity to do that, and then how such an entity might be funded, and what involvement, what parties you would need to have involved in that, and they're the next steps. They've developed the dream and where we want to go to. the next steps will be, well, how do you get there and what does that actually cost, and who needs to be involved to make that happen?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Jeff, please.
My questions are of a similar vein to Councillor O'Leary there. I'm just a little bit concerned about the idea of committing to a transformational scenario without understanding the possible cost implications in the future. I mean, we're already committed to paying for the cycleways in our city area, Te Awa. Is this committing us potentially to funding outside the city, or what?
No. So the first instance is to get that commitment that everyone believes that there is benefits to be had by pursuing the transformational scenario. And then there's work to be done so what does that actually mean? Who does that involve? And they are the reports that when they get worked through, we will bring back to council. This is not committing council to any financial activity. And it is recognised that for many of the partners, it is in-kind type activity. So the fact that we already have a great program is our in-kind commitment support for that greater transformational activity.
Okay, so the fact that we're sort of well ahead in terms of, or reasonably well ahead in terms of our network running through the city, that stands us in good stead in that area there, I see. So there's not going to be a call for extra funding from the city?
There may be a call.
What would that involve?
I think it will be more around the establishment of an entity to do that coordination and pick up from the work that the regional council have been doing. But that really is, until we've got everyone on board and start looking at that, we don't know exactly what that looks like. But if that is the decision that's made, then we'll be coming back to understand what the financial implications are, if any, for council.
Okay, so some sort of operational entity to oversee this?
Yes, that may be. So how do you ensure that you have a consistent standard maintenance look feel for cycle trails throughout the Waikato, if that's what the aim is to achieve, then that involves some sort of coordination type activity.
Okay, thanks, Robin.
Thanks. Rob, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, just to get clarification, in paragraph 5, you talk about unanimous regional support to bring it back to a future meeting of council. And in the staff recommendation under 3C, you state in the second line, supported by a majority. Is that on purpose? That in one case it's a unanimous?
It should be unanimous.
Should be unanimous.
Yes.
So the motion, the recommendation just needs to be changed, does it?
Yes.
Thank you. I assume if I can follow on then, if we don't get unanimous approval, it'll die in the ditch, so to speak, and nothing will come back to us for a second look at.
Yeah, I would suggest that if they don't get unanimous support, then they'll have to go away and look at, so is there another option? It may be that perhaps the incremental one is something to pursue instead.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thanks. Paula, please.
Thank you. I imagine some of the driver for this approach is that when the Regional Transport Committee got together and as one collaborative mechanism that for state highway funding, they were very successful in drawing funding into the Waikato. I imagine that's what you're trying to achieve here, is get all the parties together and therefore go to government with a strong bid for money for those regional cycleways and connected cycleways?
Yes, I think it's not only government, but there are other funding opportunities that open up if you can show united front and the fact that you've got a well-coordinated, well-thought-through program for cycling in the region, rather than try as individual councils or trail operators to pick.
Okay, so it's about pulling together for that. And this Waikato cycle plan has been in existence for a long time. I was aware of it a long time. But this is a review and a refocus of it?
So yes, I guess it's a reflection of that New Zealand Transport Agency have requirements around the business case approach.
Yeah.
So that was why the region took the early plan work and did the regional cycling report. And then this has fallen out of it. And again, it's working through that business case approach such that we are ticking all the boxes and ensuring or making a better opportunity for us to then seek funding for.
Okay, so I'm in favour of that. The one question I have remaining is how this works in with, as Councillor O'Leary has talked about, the cycle plans we have that deal with commuter and urban cycling opportunities, not just the recreational, off-road recreational opportunities, which are very important economically, but the commuter cycling. So, well, this will dovetail into our plans and enable us to progress our urban cycle routes, or is it separate? Do you see those being kind of a subset of it, or are they separate?
I think they're a subset of it, but they're an important subset of it because it enables the residents of Hamilton to easily access these trails, particularly the Te Awa Trail throughout the city. And it also ensures that, you know, if you've got people coming to stay and wanting to look at the gardens and various other things, that there's really neat connected opportunities for them to do cycling, even staying in the city, and the tourism opportunities that involves, because, you know, we do have some great, such as the gardens is a really a great tourist opportunity that we can link into those cycling opportunities as well.
So the business case will be stronger for tourism economic benefits, for commuter benefits and recreational off-road benefits, or all of those factors will strengthen a business case?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councillors, I'm going to move the resolution recommendation, on page 63, and in C, it's going to, instead of read supported by majority, supported unanimously. That will be the wording change. Is there a seconder? Paula, thanks.
Supported unanimously by.
Yeah, by rather than of, but I just want to say something, because Paula raised a very important point at the end there, which I also raised at the Regional Transport Committee meeting. What about commuter cycling in Hamilton? Because it's not a big issue, to be frank, in any of the towns. They're too small, pretty much. There is some, but it's a big issue here, potentially. It could be a lot bigger. And I felt that this document, as it was written originally, had almost zero attention to commuter cycling and the links and the benefits that they could get by being part of the overall network, one. And two, even within Hamilton, there's open talk about some major cycling links that have some tourist components. We already have Te Awa down the west side of the river, but there's been talk about one down the east side of the river. There's been talk about a circular route around Hamilton, joining various attractions, garden, zoo, etc., like that. And we've got other major things like the continuation of the Western Rail Trail, and how that could easily be envisaged as part of a tourist-oriented network. The university link, which would be commuter primarily, but probably tourist as well, potentially. There's a whole lot of things like that. And I really felt strongly at the meeting that that sort of opportunity had been forgotten about, that they were fixated by the river trails out of the city and the rail trail. Having said that, those are wonderful things and really good. And yesterday, as part of the Regional Transport Committee delegation to the Bay of Plenty, we came back via the Karangahaki Gorge and stopped at the Hauraki Rail Trail and had a presentation there. One of the things they said, and by the way, it was Monday about 2 p.m. in the afternoon. The car park at the main Karangahaki stop there was absolutely chocker. There wasn't a single spare car park, and they all had bike racks on the back and things like that, and on the roof. So it was clearly heavily used. In fact, they said the account for the most recent calendar year was just over 90,000 users. of the rail trail, so it's clearly got a major economic benefit, and their problem is not getting economic things like cafes and accommodation to fit in with it. They're going too fast. They haven't got a plan about where things should go and all of that, and they're struggling to keep up with the demand there. So I think those sorts of opportunities potentially are in the city as well, and we need to make sure that this is written as a document with a metro city in mind, as well as those large and important rural areas. I also, just in relation to one of Angela's questions about the money being, for a lot of this being in the later years, I know in Access Hamilton and some of the members, regular attenders, that have openly talked about bringing some of that forward earlier, because we have the opportunity with enhanced FAR rates to fund things quicker than before. In fact, put them in 3 years, and especially cycling projects, potentially, and safety related projects, and maybe the benefit of that will be to free up some money to bring some of those cycling links earlier. And I know I've talked about that with Councillor Marker. We've talked with staff about that as well. We need to see, NZTA is not in a position, they can't get their act together to tell us exactly how much we're going to have and when, but we're sort of asking staff to give us your best guesstimate of that, so that we can make a stab at least at what projects could be brought forward, because you can't spend that saved money on non-transport related things. So let's see if we can advance the cycling program is one of the ideas that's come forward there. So that's what I'll say in support of the recommendation. I've got Paula, then Mark and Gary.
Mr Chair, and I support your comments. I think it's well proven, beyond well proven, that regional cycling has an economic benefit. In fact, I was just in Otago, and not only do they have their recreational trails, they have a number of off-road trails, and they're very well used. Communities springing up, as you say, purely to service people on their bikes, which is really exciting to see in those areas. For us, the trick is to ensure that all roads, or at least some of them, cycleways, lead to Hamilton. And so that people who come in to use the recreational cycling opportunities do stay in Hamilton or come into the Hamilton parts of the cycleway and see what we have to offer. That's why, to me, the connectivity is so important, and also why I support a focus on how it interplays with our commuter cycling, all of that connectivity. Big fan of Te Awa Cycleway, can't wait till, in whatever form, I know there's some debate about parts of it at the moment, but in some form or other that it is connected, I think will be a really big win for the city, so I'm quite excited about that. And in the meanwhile, yes, we're trying to work at modal shift, getting people out of their vehicles, and cycling is going to be one choice for some people. Pedestrianism, of course, is going to be the other. Public transport. So, yeah, no, I'm very excited about this. It's good to see a fresh look at it from a regional perspective. We do need people holding our hands when we go for national level funding, and so we need to work together with people for a win-win. Hamilton is the core centre of the Waikato region, and we need them, they need us. So, thank you.
Thanks. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. Look, the time has never been more right to have these discussions and to get involved with this. And from what I can understand, with my brief understanding or brief knowledge of this field, is that we were pretty much the only ones that weren't in this plan. Largely because the kind of trails that they have, we've really only got one of these trails going through. They're talking about recreational trails in its original conception. But you know what, our needs are more for commuter cycling at this stage. But that's not necessarily exclusive, commuter cycling and recreational cycling. In fact, if you look at Christchurch example, what they've done is they've got their commuter trails around town, and then what they do is they turn them into recreational trails and promote them as loops during the weekend, so people are using them as more recreational trails. Great for business, great for activity, and great for reducing congestion. Look, it's the way to go, getting involved in these discussions. I share Councillor Taylor's nerves that this, I don't want to end up paying for some of the Hauraki Rail Trail or something that they're building down in Taupo, but it is the way we get heard. I mean, a great example of this is the expressway discussions, how we got together and got the expressway done. We couldn't have done it separately. Te Waka is another prime example of collaboration, and this is just another one of those things, nothing to be afraid of at all. This government is in a great mood when it comes to supporting this kind of thing, so if we're looking at advanced FAR rates, now is the time to act. And I would throw a word in here, when Te Awa is finished, I don't think we have really recognised how big this is going to be for tourism in this area. When Te Awa is finished, man, it's going to be a massive tourist attraction. It really, really is. And it's sort of kind of been like the boiling frog. It's happened so slowly in such short stages that it's kind of happening underneath our nose. I would like to reignite the excitement of that. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So, yep, I'm in.
Thanks. Gary?
Just remind Councillor Bunting that the frog in the boiling water died. I see this as a very low priority project. It's an optional project. As a city, we all know we face some very high priority challenges at the moment. Roading, drinking water, stormwater, sewage, roads, parks, I repeated roads twice. That's the infrastructure for the development of housing and businesses, and those are the building blocks of prosperity. Before we spend any money on this project, a very, very small number of the kilometres travelled in this city and this region will be by bike. After we spend the money on this project, if we spend the money after this project, a very, very small number of the kilometres travelled in this city and region will be done by bike. It will have virtually no impact. People just do not gravitate from one form of transport to another, the way you're thinking. I think that the situation we're in, the challenges, the financial challenges this council faces at the moment with regards to the core business for what we're in, takes huge priority over this. We've just been talking about the risks of the HIF. That is providing housing for thousands of potential New Zealand Hamilton residents. We can't afford that to go wrong. That has to be a priority. And when you've got optional spending like this, I think we've just got to stand up and say, no, we can't do it. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thanks. Siggy, please.
Thank you. I'll just be very quick. And of course, we have got important projects happening and we need to prioritise them. But when I look at the map and where we are situated, all I can think of is bike and barge, or barge and bike, because we are right in the centre, and I can just see barges going up the Waikato River with bikes on them, with sophisticated people that just love biking, but they also like to sit on a barge for a little while and enjoy our beautiful Waikato region and up north as well. So tourism is one of our larger earners in this country, and why shouldn't we have a little pie of that as well?
Thank you. Martin, please.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, support this, totally agree with the previous speaker. If we look at other parts of the world, we look at other parts of New Zealand, the Otago Rail Trail, you know, there are clear economic and business developments. This also is extremely good for domestic tourism, and do not underestimate a proportion of the super city north of us, which is heading towards 2 million, and those weekend travellers and those weekend visitors who are coming down for this recreational pastime. It's not lost on me that one of the stakeholders in the development of this regional cycling report includes the Waikato District Health Board, HCC, New Zealand Police, Principals Association, and that's telling me that they are very focused around health and mental well-being goals. It's not the only answer, but obviously as if we're looking at the whole need for better population health, for exercise, getting out there, and I think it was really illustrative, you, Councillor McPherson, talking about, you know, when you were, you know, with in the you know, the Paero to Waihi area, and those areas, and it was just absolute chocker with cars with, you know, cycling racks and stuff like that, and all of that is good open-air exercise, the more we can expand that to all parts of our population. A final big thank you to the Perry Group and to some other corporate sponsors in this area who are right behind this. And this, again, is a very good example of the public-private philanthropic partnership. Hear what Councillor Mallett says, we can't go nutty. You know, we have to make a series of choices around funding, but the actual health and well-being goals of this project, I think, will be immense. That's my personal view.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the board to vote for this. Thanks, councillors. The resolution is there. 3 off putting when it goes grey as soon as you touch it. It goes grey as soon as you touch it, but it has recorded it. Yes, that's the vote I would have expected, 13 to 1.
I got 4 votes, I'm sorry.
Even with 4 votes, it's not going to help you, Gary. Councillors, I'm suggesting we break for 5 minutes to bring a coffee or tea back in or go to the loo. Just 5, please. And we bring it in, we can do it on the go. Because this meeting is expanding to fill the available space.